It's 1947 in the small town of Roswell, New Mexico. There are no TVs and no air conditioning. Even after dark, the summer heat is stifling, and it drives people outside, hoping for some sort of breeze. July 2nd is an unremarkable Wednesday night. Dan Wilmont, owner of the hardware store, is sitting on the front porch with his wife. They're enjoying each other's company. The only sound is the rhythmic buzz of 1,000 unseen crickets. Suddenly, from the southeast, a bright object, glowing from within, silently tears across the sky. Now, Dan and his wife have got the opportunity to track it for about 60 seconds. It's long enough to get a very good look at what Dan would describe as two inverted saucers. They had no idea that what they just witnessed was the opening act of the greatest intelligence cover-up in human history. Before the US intelligence machine took over the town, there was a house on South Penn Avenue, a family home. It's a little after midnight. For reasons he can't explain, 10-year-old Jesse Marcel Jr. had suddenly woken up. Lying in his bed, he listens. The house is quiet, no radio, no voices, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the creak of a floorboard. He sits up and sees his father standing in the doorway. His father is Major Jesse Marcel, a career military man trained to keep his emotions cold and his feelings very buried. But something different that night is happening. The Major seems energized, perhaps excited. He gestures to his son, leads him to the kitchen, switches on the overhead light, washing the room in a dull yellow glow. Spread across the linoleum table, Jesse Jr. sees pieces of something. He reaches out, picks up a small, eye-shaped beam. It's surprisingly light and cold. It's metallic. He turns it in his fingers. Along its side are strange symbols catching the light. They're violet in color. He picks up a strip of what looks like aluminum foil, rubs his thumbs over it, and it crumples under his touch. But when he removes the pressure, it repairs itself perfectly as if nothing had happened. He knows whatever this is, it's unlike anything he has ever seen before. What he doesn't know is the object he's handling doesn't belong on Earth. In the world of intelligence, we have a term, significance of first report, and it refers to the first thing we hear before the lawyers get involved and before the spin doctors rewrite the narrative. The first report is usually the truth, and the first report from Roswell was a bombshell. 75 miles north, locals were hearing massive thunderstorms ripping through the Lincoln County line. But to a ranch foreman named Brazel, it sounded more like an explosion, the sound of something breaking. And next morning, he went out to investigate. What he found was a debris field in the desert floor stretching 3/4 of a mile. Lightweight beams etched with symbols, not English, not Russian. To him, they looked like hieroglyphs. Violet in color, and amongst the beams were thousands of pieces of aluminum foil. Brazel knew this was something important, but he didn't realize he had just found the crown jewels. In the offices of KGFL radio, the air smells faintly of warm electronics and cigarette smoke. The teletype machine is clattering non-stop. It's receiving election updates, weather forecasts, and sports scores. Stories for the station's local news report. Off air, Frank Joyce is a young DJ. He's listening to the story of his life. Brazel is urgently explaining what he has found in the desert. Materials that heal themselves, that won't break and can't be burnt. Symbols unlike anything he has ever seen before. With the interview over, Brazel leaves. Joyce knows he's got the story of his life on his hands, and it's something big. He punches his report into the teletype. In his mind, this is the moment KGFL stops being a small-town station and becomes the place that first reported history. But history was about to change. Over at Roswell Army Airfield, Colonel William Blanchard had just authorized a press release. Blanchard is a commander of the 509th Bombardment Group, one of the nation's elite units, and in 1945, men from the 509th had executed the atomic bomb missions. They were versed in every Soviet aircraft, every experimental US wing, every atmospheric sensor in the sky. And yet, the headline of Blanchard's press release read, US Army captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. In the world of intel, we don't use words like flying saucer lightly, especially if you're a senior official trained to identify any flying object known to man. When word reaches Washington, the machine wakes up. Guided by the Pentagon, the retraction swiftly begins. General Roger Ramey of the 8th Air Force at Fort Worth becomes the official voice. He tells the press, it wasn't a saucer. It wasn't an unknown. It was a weather balloon, a rayon targeting balloon used for radar calibration. But 400 miles away in Roswell, they can smell the lie. Going back to 10-year-old Jesse Marcel Jr., he knows what he saw, but his excitement is quickly killed by his military father, who was ordered to ensure his family's silence, and if anyone asks, it was just a weather balloon. Mac Brazel knows a weather balloon when he sees one. Over the years, plenty have come down in his property. And sure, they are made of foil, but they are also made of balsa wood and rubber. At the debris field, there was no sign of either, and the foil behaved in different ways. It defied physics. But hours after he gave his interview to KGFL, he is back. This time he is flanked by military police. They order Frank Joyce to re-interview him, and Brazel is a different man. His shoulders are slumped, his eyes are dull, and his story new. He made a mistake, he says. What he found was a weather balloon. Joyce watches the sweat bead off Brazel's forehead. He takes notes as Brazel recites words that no longer sound like his own. And in that moment, Frank Joyce learns something no journalism school could ever teach. Why secretly fly the debris to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a center for aerospace research? And if it was a balloon, why did every witness find themselves visited by men in suits who suggested, for the sake of their families and their lives, they should forget what they saw? If it was a balloon, why examine it at Los Alamos, the top-secret laboratory where the atomic bomb had been built? There is another layer the history books gloss over: the scrubbing. Witnesses report seeing military teams walking through the debris field with what appeared to be early Geiger counters and specialized vacuum units. If this was indeed a weather balloon made of rubber, balsa wood, and tin foil, why was the topsoil removed and flown out in crates? From an operational standpoint, you only remove the earth when it has been contaminated by something that doesn't belong in the local ecosystem. You don't decontaminate a weather balloon site. You decontaminate a crash site involving propulsion systems that shouldn't exist. They weren't just picking up trash, they were performing a forensic erasure of the site's signature. But there's something they missed. Let's look at the smoking gun of the Ramey Memo. When General Ramey gave his press conference at Fort Worth, the one that rewrote claims that a flying saucer had been captured, he was holding a piece of paper. For decades, it was just a blurry smudge in a photograph. But today, with the help of digital enhancement, we see that text. It's a telegram, and it contains no mention of weather balloons, but it certainly does reference the disk and the victims of the wreck. This was a confidential internal communication caught on camera, a slip-up in the intel chain. And weather balloons, they don't carry payloads, no passengers, and the disk hit the ground in a remote, unpopulated area. So whoever or whatever these victims were must have been on board. On July 7th, 5 days after the bright light in the sky, A phone rings in the Ballard funeral home. 22-year-old Glenn Dennis receives the call. It's the mortuary office at Roswell Army Air Force Base here. His questions are calm. How many hermetically sealed coffins do you have in stock? Do you have any way to preserve bodies that have been exposed to the elements? Glenn assumes there has been a training accident. It wouldn't be the first. He decides to drive out to the base hospital, partly out of curiosity, partly to check in on a friend. From the moment he arrives, there is something odd in the air. Lines of ambulances are parked with their rear doors open, engines idling, and no one is moving. But everyone seems somewhat agitated. Out of the corner of his eye, Glenn catches a glimpse of something moving. He turns and sees an object being loaded into the back of a Jeep. It's curved, metallic. Etched into its surfaces are markings that he does not recognize. They're violet in color. As he tries to process the scene, his arms are roughly grabbed and two military police officers pull him to the side. The captain steps in, close enough for Glenn to smell his bad breath, to see the sweat at his temples. The captain doesn't try to explain. He tries to shut things down. Mention one word, he snarls, and they'll be picking your bones out of the sand. Shaken, Glenn leaves. A few days later, he eventually sees the nurse. Her eyes are hollow, pale, like somebody who hasn't slept in weeks, and certainly doesn't expect to again. Her hands are shaking. As she tears the corner from a napkin, she draws quickly, as if she's afraid of being interrupted. Small bodies, large heads, slits where noses should be. She doesn't embellish. She doesn't speculate. Not long after, she's transferred to England, and then, completely, disappears from the records. Roswell wasn't just an ending. It was patient zero of the modern world. In medical terms, patient zero is the source of an outbreak. In intelligence terms, Roswell was the source of the national security state. It was the moment the military realized they could blueprint for deniability. A standardized playbook for evaporating physical evidence into the ether and intimidating civilian witnesses. This is the playbook that has been used ever since. Eventually, the weather balloon story began to wear thin. For 30 years, the secret held. In the late 1970s, that narrative began to fracture. Major Jesse Marcel, the very man who handled the debris, went on record.
The balloon story was a cover.
On his deathbed, he told the world, it was not of this earth. By the early 1990s, the pressure reached a breaking point. A GAR audit, triggered by a New Mexico congressman, forced the Air Force hand. They couldn't stick to the balloon story any longer. The public was too smart, too aware, so they performed a pivot. In the world of counterintelligence, when a lie is exposed, you never admit the truth. Instead, you tell a higher-level lie. They abandoned the narrative of the simple weather balloon and claimed what crashed in the desert was part of an ultra-classified surveillance program known as Project Mogul. These were massive arrays of sensors sent into the upper atmosphere to listen for Soviet nuclear tests. This was a brilliant, limited outgrowth strategy. It used the reality of the Cold War espionage to justify the military's strong-arm tactics. It explained the top-secret security and the strange materials by claiming that they were experimental radar reflectors. But there was a fatal flaw in the Mogul pivot. The equipment used in Project Mogul was built from standard, off-the-shelf materials. Neoprene, nylon, aluminum. It utilized balsa wood and, believe it or not, floral-patterned adhesive tape. It didn't utilize I-beams that no cutting torch could break. It didn't utilize foil that perfectly self-corrected when crumpled. It didn't emboss the technology with violet symbols. And most importantly, it never flew passengers. The military spent millions of dollars and 50 years trying to convince you that the elite nuclear officers couldn't tell the difference between a balsa wood kite and a craft from another world. In 1947, security activities in the United States were in a transition. The Office of Strategic Services had been dissolved. Shortly after World War II, the CIA was in a state of being newly founded. The NSA itself was recently signed into law. In fact, just 2 weeks after the Roswell crash. Now, this was no coincidence, and it paved the way for a new approach to truth management. A way to protect the most explosive secrets. And of course, the priority was to contain the ultimate secret. When debris was removed from the authority of the 509th, it was broken up into many packages, an example of what we call compartmentalization protocol. If all you have is a piece of the wing, we can tell you that you're studying a new alloy. If you're only working on part of a cockpit, there's really nothing suspicious about that. It's a way of ensuring no individual scientist, no individual general, can ever understand what's actually going on. Only the control group, the small number of puppeteers at the very top, ever have true access to the full picture. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, or rather the entities in the desert. Barnaby Barnett, a soil conservationist, claimed he saw a second crash site and he got a good look at the victims. He described small bodies, large heads, no hair, no ears, big almond-shaped eyes. The skeptics say, if there were indeed bodies, where is the proof? But in intel terms, the proof is the overreaction. Why did the military cordon off Roswell Hospital? Why did the nurse who spoke to Glenn Dennis from the funeral home vanish without a trace? When the debris and the occupants were moved, it was done under what was known as a flash priority. Planes were cleared from the skies. Air traffic controllers were literally told to look the other way. Every person who handled those crates was forced to sign documents. They are national security oaths. They carry the weight of a firing squad, and you do not use them to protect a weather balloon. You do use them when the secrets that you are carrying has the power to rewrite history of the human race. By 1948, the Roswell site is clean. The topsoil has been removed and the witnesses have been managed. The flying disc headline is a vague memory in the back of a drawer. The Roswell cover-up was the blueprint for the secret government. It taught the Pentagon that they could lie to the public and the public would eventually move on. It taught them that national security is merely a blanket that can cover any sin. But enforced silences have a habit of breaking, and years later, General Arthur Exon, who had flown over the Roswell crash sites, stated that the material from Roswell was indeed extraterrestrial. He said that the test showed it was titanium mixed with something else, a molecular bond we could not replicate. This story is far from over. In part 2 of Roswell Harvest, our focus shifts away from the sands of New Mexico into the sterile, white halls of Bell Labs. We're going to look at the Great Leap Forward, because in the winter of 1947, while the military was scrubbing the desert, the world suddenly and suspiciously got very, very smart. How did we go from clunky vacuum tubes to the silicon transistor, the soul of every computer on Earth, in just a matter of months? Why did the giants of the American industry suddenly hold patents for technology that shouldn't have existed for another 50 to 100 years? We'll uncover how the wreckage from a ranch in 1947 became the fiber optics, the lasers, and the microchips that run your life today. We didn't just find a craft, we harvested a future. And this is all from flattened government documents. This is Thinkavarium.